other than making sure this is dry? What are we doing first?
Inspecting it for damage.
Yeah. So what do you mean by damage, for example? I see some
bruises, blood.
Yeah.
Discoloration.
Torn skin.
Smell. Skin.
Yeah. So hopefully that stuff happens at check-in, right? Checking your chickens. But once you get it to your station, you are looking for like if there's any tears in the skin here, because that's going to affect how you handle the animal. Because you want to make sure that we have coverage in the breast, right? So if there's already an incision, there kind of is. You just know you have to be careful with that. Usually, you want to make sure also that when inspecting it, there's usually this big giant chunk of fat, which we're going to remove pretty quickly, and then you render it, you wouldn't throw it away. But that's going to be something to think about. Should be moist, like you said, no bruising, no damage. Next step, what's the first thing we're going to do? We're going to remove this piece of fat. What's next?
Open it.
Take the thighs off.
Okay, so first step of taking any of these legs off is what? Dislocate the hips.
Yeah.
So we want the oyster, right? So the only way to get to it is you got to dislocate these hips. So I'm reaching under here. These are the oysters. My hands are right under the oysters, and I'm dislocating the hips, but I'm trying not to tear the skin right here in the process, right? We want to pull it out so these legs lay flat. And we're going to extend it even more shortly, so it's flat. And this does expose, sometimes there's 2 chunks of fat here, which are great for lots of stuff, but rendering for sure. Okay, now I'm going to take the wings off first. That's what I do. You don't have to do it that way. But when I'm ready to take these legs off, where am I going to make the incisions here? On top of these fat lines. That's always, anytime you seam an animal, you look for a fat line, there's usually a seam underneath it most of the time. Because of gravity, I'm going to take these wings off first. So what I'm going to be doing is hyperextending the arm, basically putting my finger over the elbow. And you can see that's the joint. I'm going to make a cut to the bone, not the joint. Okay, so this is going to go basically to the bicep. So I'm going to make an incision through the bicep and clean that side just a little bit. Not all the way around, just the top. Next thing I'm going to do is reach over top of this and pop it out. And that's why we go to the bicep, not the joint. If you go to the joint, it's always going to leave a big cap of cartilage on the top that you can remove. So we're going to remove that. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm a big believer in doing this, especially if you're doing like 50 chickens. Go through the processes first. So first thing we're going to do is remove that, and we're going to trim this just so it's a clean wing flat. Just remove that cartilage, which you could use in stock if you wanted. These will be presented with the carcass because of all the gel, right? So we're going to save that. So now you have 2 wing flats that are clean and scrap. Keeping your board clean the whole time. Next step, the legs, right? So we're going to make an incision kind of through the middle of that fat line. And you can see what we're doing is we've left all that coverage in the breast and the skin. That's very covered. The breast ends here, so this is more than 90%. 90% coverage is your target, or more. So that's going to be enough. All right, so we're just going to make that incision. We're going to turn it over. Now, you see that bone right there? You want to really extend the bone out so you can see the whole knuckle of the bone. That allows you to get to that oyster, right, very easily. So all we're going to do is come in above the oyster. And what I like to do is there's a carriage of bone right here. I'm just going to stick my thumb, and I'm going to grab a hold of that oyster. And then what I'm going to do is come through there, and you can see how clean that is. And the oyster is still attached to the leg. It's another thing that we're looking for. If the oyster comes off, present it anyway, so you show us you knew where it was supposed to go. Don't just ignore it. Now this is important. We're going to go through this joint straight, right? Straight through the joint. When you see it pop, the minute that pops up, you're going to turn your knife down. I'm going to start pressing against the backbone and start sawing and pulling the leg away. And what that leaves is none of that meat, that big chunk of meat that comes away in the back. So basically, again, you're going through the joint. When it pops, you angle your knife down, start to saw and pull the leg away. And then we're going to fabricate that. So same thing on this side. So we go through the joint, when it pops, angle, pull. Clean. Okay? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to come away with the skin on the backbone, because you're going to be presenting the backbone. and we don't want to have skin on the backbone. Okay, now you got your legs. So to fabricate the legs, there's a couple things we have to do. We're looking for making sure that you have a boneless thigh, a lollipop, drumstick, and then we're going to clean up the rest of this stuff so there's not excess fat and skin. So basically what we're going to do is if you have to make an incision through here, again, you're looking for lines of fat, which is one right there. That allows me to go right through without bumping into the bone. Okay? You don't need to remove this bone, but we are going to clean it up. You can see there's quite a bit of fat down here and excess skin. So we're just going to remove some of that fat and skin. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to cut a line all the way around this. We're looking for the sinews here, which you can see, to be kind of cut through. And then we're going to pull this down. If the sinews are still attached, like this is, come in from you see how long that sinew is, we want to remove it. So we're just going to trim that away if we can grab it. If you have tweezers or pliers, that's okay too. And then, chef knife. You can use a boning knife too if you want. I'm going to try to lay this as flat on the board as I can. Make a quick cut through. And it's pretty clean. I would have to go back for this. There's still a little bit of like cartilage and residual stuff on the bone. There we go. So that's kind of what we're looking for, clean. Sometimes it shatters, but I find it shatters because you're like, I don't want to hurt this animal's feelings. It doesn't have feelings now. Okay, so just get your knife against the bone, and with one clean cut, lean into it. We're not sawing through the bone. Okay, so now what we're looking for, just to clean this up, is we would kind of pull away this extra piece of sinew. Make sure that skin is completely covering, and then you've got your clean drumstick. Okay, drumstick. This you could present with the backbone if you wanted to for cartilage or collagen. For this piece, there's a lot of fat. You can see it already. So we're going to kind of trim away any of these big giant chunks of fat, which tend to be on the top and sides. And that's one of the big things that we're looking for. Then what we're going to do is, there's your line of fat. I'm going to take the back of your knife, scrape the bone, so you can expose the bone. What I'm going to do then is just take my finger and go under the bone. Take my finger out. Make sure that I get that kneecap. If there's a piece of kneecap, which usually there's a little piece right there. That comes away. Then on the next thing, I'm going to go back in there and I'm going to feel around to make sure I didn't leave cartilage behind. Because usually there's some cartilage on that. And there's a piece of bone right there too. We're looking for good coverage. If you have that extra piece of fat right there, you can kind of just gently trim that away as well. And then you can present it neatly, roll, just like that. So basically, half the animal so far that's what we have so far. Okay. Make sure that as you're doing all this, when we're walking around, we want to see it. We don't want it to look like a horror movie was happening on your cutting board. So keep it scraped and clean the whole time. Okay. For the next step, the breast, is a couple things you can do. Who was taught the way to come through the top? Who was taught the way to go through the bottom? Okay, so we go through the top, that's fine. So if you've seen both ways, that's fine. If you're going to go through the top, then remember we've already